HTML table. So what is HTML table? For those of us that were in that class, how did we define HTML table in web development? What is HTML table? Can anybody try? HTML table. Okay, so since we are not ready to talk, so let me just recap briefly on that, and then I move to focus this morning. So in our last class, we talked about HTML table, where I told us that there is a structure called table in programming or web development, which is known to be two-dimensional objects. So a table is a two-dimensional object that helps us as developer to present data to our audience or our web visitors. So we discuss a lot of tags that makes up HTML table, if you can still remember. We talk about the table tag itself, talk about the table heading tag, we talk about the table row tag, then we also talk about the TD, which is the table data, which are also referred to as the table cells. So we discuss all this in that class. Now, I think I gave us an assignment to put something together with that table as a structure. So I need to confirm if we have done the assignment. I asked us to do something with table. Flourish, have you done yours? Or did we even practice the table itself? I need someone to respond to that question before I proceed. Particularly those of us that were in that class. Even those that were not in that class, I believe you must have gone through the video. Can you guys hear me at all? Please, I need a response. Let me know if you are hearing me.
So I can hear you.
Okay, so I was asking if we have practiced that table.
Not yet, me.
Flourish, what about you? Flourish, if you are here. Mr. Austin, I don't know if you have gone through any of those videos of our last class.
So I used it for my assignment.
No, no, sir. No, sir. I'm not. So I'm not going through the video.
Okay, so please, once you are free, try and go through the video, because after this class, then we'll be entering the main website design section. You know, all this while we have been mastering tags, which I told us that is very important. as a web developer, as a learner that is learning how to develop websites. I've said it is important you understand the individual functions of the tags, which are the building blocks, and also understand some of the basic and intermediate CSS. And that is what we have been trying to achieve all this while, trying to master the tags one after the other. So after this class, if we're able to complete it, it then means that the next class we will be starting the main web development, where we will start putting a functional website together with the help of all the tags we have been learning. So that is the scope of what we are doing. Okay, so I will advise us to visit all the videos and make sure that you master everything, though we are still going to be using most of them. We are going to use at least 90% of all the tasks we have used so far, we have learned so far. They are going to be reused in the course of building the range websites. But it will be better for us if we take our time to understand them individually. Okay, so this morning we are focusing on HTML form design. HTML form design. Please, I want us to take this topic very, very serious, because the topic covers, or let's say it spans from the front end to the back end. When we get to the back end, we are still going to be talking about form. So understanding it properly here will help you when we also get to the back end. And you can see the arrangement. It happened to be the last tag. So I strategically arranged the tags like this. So we have been learning from the lesser one, and then we are ending it with the most advanced HTML tags. So form is very, very important element. It plays a major role in a website. So we need to pay more attention and understand what HTML form is all about. So what is form? What is website form? I believe that some of us, this is not our first time of hearing the term form. We fill form, almost every time. Sometime when you are looking for a job on the internet, you are prompted a form to fill. And then we should have known what or the role of that form you are filling. So the form is basically used to collect the user's inputs. So anytime I use the word inputs in the course of this training, I am talking about the user's data, the user's information. So that is actually the primary function of the HTML form. Wherever you come across form in any website, the primary objective why the developer programmed the form is for the form to act as a questionnaire. It's for the form to collect data on behalf of the admin. And then we need to understand that the information that will be imputed into the form are meant to be submitted somewhere. And that very place where those users' content or input will be submitted, as soon as the user hits the submit button or registered button, it is called the website database. And that is what we are going to design or create with the SQL, which is part of the program. And then the transportation of those content from the form to that back-end database, which will have been created with the SQL, That is the reason why we will need PHP to help us to transport or to transmit the user's data from the form to the back-end database. So you can see the connection now. So the journey will not end in HTML, the journey of form. We will continue with the form when we get to the back end. That is why I said we should pay more attention. Make sure that you practice this form at the end of this class. So what I have on my screen here, HTML form, I use to collect users' input, like I've explained. What are these inputs the form can be used to collect from the users? Number one, tests, such as your name. So a programmer can program a text box where you are expected to enter your name, which falls under text, your phone number or your contact number, your date, the date at which you are filling that form or you are registering for the program the form is designed for, and more. So so the form is a very important element, like I've said. So if we look at the simple HTML form structure, I just want us to understand this simple structure before I switch to my development environment to implement this structure. Now, you start by declaring the form. So the form is now the principal tag, just like table that came with other sub tags. So it's not just one tag that will help us to develop the form. But before you create other tag, you must have declared the main container, which is the form, and every other element you declare inside it becomes the element of that form. In other words, become the properties of that form. So whichever way you want to design your form, what I am saying is that you have to start by declaring the form tag. Inside it, you can now create other elements. So quickly, we want to look at the design, the user end of the form, the expected outputs, what we are expected to have. So I would like to quickly walk us through it, then before we go into the development so that you can have a proper understanding on how the form is structured. Now, we need to understand that the form itself has the user interface or the user's end. That is the end that I described. The end that allows the user to input their data is called the user end. So it needs to be friendly. It needs to be colorful. It needs to be well structured. You need to design it in a way that it will be exciting to the users to encourage them to fill it. There's a way you will design your form and the user will be, will be eager to fill it. But there's a way a form can be very, ugly. Maybe it's not well structured. It's not colorful. So there are a lot of users that once they come across such a form, they will skip it. They are not going to fill it. So you need to bear that in mind, that the user interface of the form should look very attractive. And that's the reason why I want to do a sketch, a simple sketch, just to represent the form we want to design this morning. And the way you learn how to design form is that you learn from the simple to the complex. So any web developer who cannot design simple form cannot as well design a complex form. So we are going to start from simple form. So what we are saying is that I want to model the form. I want to picture what we are expected to come up with at the end of this class. So this is just like the main container. This is just like the main container, which is the form. Then inside this form, remember, this is what you must have declared with that form tag. Then inside it, we are going to have what we call inputs. Don't forget, I said the inputs are like different text boxes designed to collect different users' information. So one can be, and when you are creating your input, there should be what we call the input label. The input label is what spell out what describe what the users are expected to write or input inside the box. So for example, now if I have my first name, I have my first name. So let's say I have this. So I'm now going to provide a text box for them to write their first name. So this first name is the label, while this is the input. So there is a tag that we will use to create this label, and there is a tag we will use to create the input. So every input is expected to carry a description, and that description is what we are referring to as what? The label. So now the next one I can say, let's say what? Middle what? Names. I'm abbreviating now. And then I'll provide what? A text box for them to enter their middle name. Then the next one can be dates. The next one can be dates. Can be dates. So in the case of dates, I am going to program a calendar picker or a date picker, which means that they don't have to type the date. So there will be a calendar what icon that I'm going to provide to them. So once they tap it, it will pop out or drop out a calendar for them to be able to choose the date of filling that form. Then we can also have, let's say, a text box or an input collecting their states. So depending on what you want to actually collect from the customer or the clients, the visitors. Now, in the case of states, I am not going to allow them to be typing the states. So I will have created a drop down. So I'm going to create a drop down that they will just click, that will bring out what? The list of all the states that I must have programmed. And then from there, they can easily what? Pick. Then at the end of the day, so this is actually a simple form. So I'm going to go beyond this in my design. I just want to use this to give us a background of what we are about to achieve. So this is where you are going to add your submit button. So this submit button is going to be actionable button. In other words, when they click on it, it will trigger an action. So when they click on this button, it will automatically call a PHP script, which we are going to learn when we get to the back end. And that PHP script will have been programmed in a way that once it is called, it will process whatever the user must have filled in here, fill in here, fill in here, fill in all the words, the input directly to what? To the back-end database. So the web admin at his or her convenient time can log into the back end, which is the administrative section, and view all the record the visitor or the users must have sent through the form. So I want to verify if this is clear before we go for the development. I just want us to picture how a website form or HTML form look like before we go into the development proper. Any question first? Please, Learn to respond fast. That is how I know that you are with me. You don't need to wait for anybody.
No question, no question, sir. Go ahead, sir.
All right, so now let's quickly go into the development section of the form we are talking about. So to go to the development environment, just allow me so that I can clear all this. Now, we are going to start with a new file. I believe this are the file we have developed so far since we started this training. So I'm starting a new file and I'm going to name that file form.html. Then I'm going to create a different CSS file for it as well. So to start with, I'm still working from our project folder. So I will just name this file form.html. Then, of course, I will activate my HTML inbuilt file, HTML5, and then the title can be HTML form design. Now, let me quickly create my CSS file that will be styling all my form elements. So I go to, I think we have a dedicated CSS file. So I'll go inside my CSS folder, then create. I will also name it form, but the extension will be .css. Then, of course, since I'm working with external CSS, I need to link the two files together. So go into your head section and type link, which is part of what we have been doing. And then comments in order to see all the features in your main folder. And then from there, navigate to CSS and select the form CSS file. So with this, I have connected my form page or file to my CSS file. So to start with, I will use comments. I believe we also know how to write comment line right in HTML. So what are we doing? HTML form, or let's say what? Form design. Form design. So while I was explaining in my slide, I said to start with, you declare the form tag, which is the main container. You can decide to have everything wrapped in a div, but it's your choice. Probably your intention is to use the div to float it as you like, in other words, to move it. Or you can as well use the form tag as a container. So I will just type form and then hit enter. So automatically it will bring out this as the form tag. Now, the next thing is for you to expand it. I have explained before now that whenever you want to use an element or a tag as a container, once that tag is declared, kindly what? Expand it. So once you start expanding it, it gives you an idea that it is a container that is expecting other content inside it. Now, once you declare HTML form, it comes with this attribute called action. But we are not doing anything with this what? Attribute until we get to the back end section. So the work of that attribute is expected to what? To enable us to specify the URL, the address of the PHP scripts that should or that we process the whole of the user's input from this form to the back end. But remember what I told us from the beginning. We are not involving the backend aspect of the form at the moment. We are only focusing on the user interface of the form. So for that reason, we have nothing to do with what? This set of attributes that I am bringing in. So I'm going to leave them blank for now. So when we get to the back end, you will see us revisiting them. Then we will now understand their role, their function. But now see them as PHP or see them as attributes. Now, once you have declared the form as a container, so I am going to create a div to wrap. But before the div, I want a frame. Sorry, I think I've deleted it. I want a frame that will bind all or group all my form elements. Remember from my slide, I told us that the simple form structure is that once you have declared the form tag, then you now declare the elements. So what we have just called now is the form. Then we are about to what? To declare all the sub-elements. Now, these sub-elements we want to declare, we want to wrap all of them in a frame like this. So that frame is acting as, or it is used to group the whole form element together. Now, there is a tag for doing that. And that tag is called field sets. So you can make sure you are taking note of the structure. So let me bring back this closer so that I can expand all of them together. Sorry. Now, what we are saying is that once you have opened up your form tag, then you declare the field sets. So the field sets groups all the form elements. Now, if I go to the front end to see the impact of this tag called field sets, let's go to the front end, you will notice that it will create a frame. That is what it's going to create. It will create a frame. Let's see it before we proceed. So you can see it. So this is the frame. Now, inside that field set, I will create another tag in order to give my form a description so that whenever the users are filling the form, they will have an idea of what type of form they are filling. So to do that, I will use a tag called legend. A tag called legend. Now, this particular legend, I will write the form title, which is what? Registration or contact. Contact form. So if I go back to the front end and preview again, you will see that what? The field set now has a title describing it, waiting for other element to come into the form. So later we are going to use our CSS to reposition this legend, this capture, either to the center of the form or to leave it the way it is. So I just want us to take note of the structure. So now I want to go to this aspect of declaring the form elements. Remember, anything you create inside the form tag falls under what? The form element. In as much it is the form that is managing it, it is one of the form elements. So the field set is an element. The legend is also an element. Now, the first thing I want to create is the first name. Since it's a contact form, I want to start by collecting their first name. Now, like I started by explaining, you need to attach a label and also the bus. So the bus in this case is now the input. So the input is one of the most used form elements. Now, how do I program that? There is what we call inline and block elements. So for me to explain it better, I need to illustrate it. Now, what I am saying is that the label, the first name will come, let's say like this. The first name will be here. Now, the middle name can come after the first name input. So I will now have a bus like this. So where you have the input on the same line, this is called what? Inline. Inline. But I don't want this. So in case you want this, you see the way I am going to declare them. Now, in the situation whereby you want this middle name to come to the next line, not to continue with the first line, this is called what? Block display. So if they are displayed on a straight line, we call them what? Inline display. Then if they are taking each line, we refer to them as what? Block display. Okay, so I believe that is clear. So that is clear. Now, let me go back to the declaration now. Now, because I want the block display method, whereby the next input will come under the previous input, not to continue in front of the previous input. That is the reason why I am calling what? A div. Because the input tag itself and the label, they are inline elements. From the beginning of this class, I must have mentioned how to convert inline element to a block element is to simply wrap them inside a block element. For example, the label, which is the first tag. So label is to write that form description, that first name. Now, once you call the label tag, it comes with an attribute called for, where you are expected to describe what that label is going to describe. So in this case, I will say what? F name is what the label is going to describe. Now, remember from the beginning, I told us that anything in the angle brackets will not be displayed to the user. So for the fact that you have typed F name, that will not be visible to the user for them to be guided on what to impute inside the input box you are about to create. So we have to come to the content section of that label and type it in full. First name. If you want to space them, you can go ahead. So if I go to the front end now and view what we have done, you can see it, first name. So that is what the label does. The label is to give you this input description. In other words, the function of this input is to tell the user that this is the kind of data you are to provide. There are a lot of users that when you did not give them this short description of what they are expected to write inside the box, they will not know what to impute. So that is why it is very, very important you guide them with the label. Now, but right now, there is no box in front of that label. And for me to add that box, I will simply come here because I am writing all this inside a block element, div. That is the reason why I'm not doing break. If not, the only way I will have sent the input tag to the next line, if I'm not writing this whole code inside the div, is by adding what? The break. But since I'm already using what? Div, which means that what? They are automatically what? Converted to a block element instead of behaving like an inline element. So I'll call my input to create that box that the user will impute their data. The tag you need, it is called inputs in HTML. So this input automatically provide a box. So if I go back to the front end, you will see that what? You have added a box they can write in information. So that is the work of that what? Input. But we still have to add more attributes. So you need to tell us the type of input. Remember, I started by saying, anytime I use the word input, I am talking about the data expected or expecting from the visitor to fill inside that box. So what we are seeing here as the type attribute is to tell the browser or to tell the user or you yourself the kind of data the visitor or the user is expected to fill in. So when you say type text, it means that what is going to be what? Text. So I also want a name. So this name, we don't actually need it now. So I just want us to start learning with it because we definitely need it as an attribute when we start processing the user's data with PHP to the backend. So it is the PHP that we use the name attribute to collect or to process the user's input. So which means that for PHP to be able to process whatever the users will type inside that box, there must be name attributes. So if PHP does not find the name attribute, it will not process that input. So which means that that input is not meant to be processed to the back end. So we are adding it right now so that we can start getting used to it. So the name, how do I know what to supply as my name? Whatever you use as your label, that is what you should use as your name. So work with that format. Now, there is something I want the user to also what? Understand. If you go back to the front end, you will discover that there are some of the users that will not still understand how the format, how to type their first name. So what we are going to do now, we are going to bring in another attribute called placeholder. So the work of the placeholder is to give them an example. So the example could be, you can say e.g., you are trying to help them to know how to type it. E.g., write Egwero. E.g., Egwero. So once you type that, e.g., Egwero, and then go back to the front end, you will see that what? There is now a transparent writer that is guiding the user on what to type, how they are to write their own. Because adding this first name, at times, there are some basic web user that will not still understand by having what? The label. So you have to further explain to them by giving them what? The format, the example. I believe we have been filling for, we must have seen all this. So now you begin to understand the logic behind how the programmer or the developer program these things. So now you can as well decide to do away with the label and just work with what? The placeholder. So if I am doing away with the label, what I'm going to put here is that what? Enter your first name. If I want my placeholder to play the role of my label, I will not just give them example. I will tell them what? Enter your first name so that they will know what to do. So it's your choice, depending on how you want your form to communicate the idea to the visitor. So I also want to validate that input. In other words, I want to program it in a way that it should be compulsory. If the user, peradventure, the user skip this particular input, the form should not submit to the back end. We refer to that as what? Form validation. You are restricting, you are forcing them, you are mandating them to do the needful. It is called validation. So if I want to validate this form with HTML, because we can actually validate with JavaScript, you can also validate with PHP. But if you want to implement some of this simple validation directly from HTML, just type what? Require. So once you write require like this, is an input, is a is an attribute without a value. So just adding this, if the user did not fill these inputs, that is what we are saying. That for any reason, maybe they forget, if they fail to fill it, if they fail to fill this particular input, the form will not submit. Now, at the moment, you will not notice the impact of that until you have the button that will trigger the action. So let's say for practice purpose, so that we confirm the impact of this require. Let me just say I am done with this, and then I create what? A button tag, and inside the button, I add an attribute called type, and then the type will now be what? Submit. Then, if I go to the front end now, you see that what? You have added a submit button, but there is no description. There is no description. There is nothing for them to see. So I will just select what? Register, or let me just write what? Register. Or why is not showing? Okay, good, because we are using button. Let's say what? Register. So if I click here, let me also add what? Value. The value should be what? The value should be submit also. So if I go back to my front end now, you now see what? The button. So let's say the user tried to submit this form without filling here. Let me click here now. You see what it's saying now. Please fill out this field, which means that what? You have validated it. You have made it what? Compulsory. That is the right word. You have made this input compulsory. So if the user does not fill it, it will not submit. So if I fill it now, let's say I type in what? Egwero here now, and I click, it has submitted. But where did this submitted that information to? We don't know yet, because we have not attached what? PHP that will have carried the input and dump it at the what? The back end database. So that is just to explain some of these inputs. Now, in some websites where you are considering the level of the people that will be filling the form, you cannot help them to put something like asterisk. I believe you must have seen something like asterisk that is usually what? Red in color. So once you see it attached to any input, it means that what? That input is compulsory, so that you will not have to wait until when you try skipping it and you try submitting before you can get that information that came up. So what I am going to do here, if I want to program that, I am going to simply use an overflow tag. It is called overflow tag. It is called span. So where am I going to add the span? So I am going to add the span here because it's an inline. So I will simply call it span. So it's just like you are saying that what? Overflow of or extra of inputs. Now inside it, I will now write Shift and 8 to add what? The red icon. Now in my CSS, if I now go to, let's go to the front end and see the result of that. So you can see that you have added it. Now, if you want to make it red so that mere looking at it by users, they will know that this input is compulsory. Now, that should be done through CSS. So let me quickly do that since we have connected our CSS file to this. So I will just come here. I will just say what? Span, because it's not a class element, and then declare your calling bracket. And then I will just say what? Color. Color, let's say what? Red. So if I want to work on the size, I will also do the same as what? Font size. Font size, I could just give it 18 PS. And then let me check now. So we have it in red. So this is the logic behind some of these things you see when you are filling form. So you are a developer, so you should know when next you see a form, you will know what that developer did. So I want to hold on for 10 minutes and allow us to try something like this. So I think I will stay on someone's screen while you are doing that before I continue, just to verify whether you can do exactly what I've done. Because like I told us, it's an important element. So even if we don't finish it in one class, we will continue from where we stop in our next class. But we must understand how to design form because it's a very crucial element in websites. So if there is no question, let me start with question. If you have question, you can ask. If there is no question, then for those of us that are joining with laptop, please, somebody should share his or her screen. Let me see what is going on from your end.
Sir, can you go back to the code where they write the code?
If anybody working, please share your screen, please. I want to see what you are doing. Who is sharing screen?
Sir, the code, the HTML code.
Okay, okay, sorry. Hope you can see it now.
Yes, sir.
Please switch back to your code section. I want to see your code.
Please share your screen. Let me snap that button.
You said I should.
This to your this thing, your screen. I want to snap.
Okay.
that.
Is it the one you want to snap?
I'm done, sir.
Okay. With Purity, you were saying something. Please, can you share your code? Let's see. And Purity, are you still here? Please, can you share your screen? I want to see your code so I can assist you on that asterisk.
Okay. I'll share it, sir.
Okay. Please, can you maximize the screen? Can you click on the maximize icon? Let's see the whole of the code. Okay. Now, immediately after that require, immediately after the angle brackets, after that require, place your cursor. Yes, click there. Now, type span tag, span. Enter. Then now type Shift and 8. Hold down the Shift button on your keyboard and press 8 to give you the asterisk icon. Good. Now you now
Okay.
go to your CSS. You now go to your CSS and call the span tag, then call color red. Switch back to your CSS file. I believe others, in case you're having this issue, use our own to correct your own as well. After our own, I will continue.
Mm-hmm.
We are called the tag now. Call the element span. 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 Then open your CSS declaration block. Open your CSS declaration block. That is not the bracket for CSS now. The coiling bracket, the coiling bracket. Oh yeah, press enter. All right, now, what you will do now call color property, color property, color. Now give it red. The next one, oh yeah, delete that one. Delete that one and type red. Then go and check now. So any other thing you want to add, you wrap them inside this CSS declaration block. Now let's go back to the front end to examine what you have done. Quickly. Go back to your front end. Go back to your front end. Go back to your HTML file and view the front end for us. All right, so you can see it now.
It's done, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
So you can share. Okay, so guys, let's continue. Let's continue because we still have a lot of input to develop. And please, I want to make sure that I'm not too fast. I want to make sure that I'm not too fast because we need to understand this particular element. All right, so just give me Mr. Austin and Co. Hope you are with us. I believe you are doing something as well there.
Yes, I'm working on my own.
All
You
right.
know, I wasn't doing when you were teaching.
Okay, all right. All right, so let's quickly continue. So let me check the front end, the user end, to see what we have developed so far. So this is what we have designed. So this is a form with just an input, one input. Now we want to increase the number of inputs we want to collect from the user. Just as we have collected the first name, we want to collect the middle name, we want to collect the last name, we want to collect their date of birth, we want to collect their gender, whether the user is a female or male, we want to collect the state they are from, we want to collect the country they are from. So we want to what? Expand this form. So to do that, we go in here. Now, I want you to take note of the structure. Take note of the structure here. Very important. You can see that the whole of the tags we have created so far, they are for developing one input, which is the first name. And they are all wrapped inside the container element, which is the div, just to make it what? A block element. I was saying something the other time. Let's assume that I remove this particular div. I'm coming back. I'll bring it back so that you know the reason why we added the div, why we wrap all this in div. So if I create another input now, or let's say what? Label for middle name. Sorry, label for middle name. And then, like I said, you give the full description in the content section of that tag. Label for middle name, which is what? Middle
name, then followed by the inputs, followed by the inputs. So the input is going to be tests, and the name will be whatever tests are used in my form, the label. So Control C, and then kindly paste it there. Then if I also want them to know the format, I will also bring in the placeholder. I will say what? Enter, I'm changing it now. Enter your middle name here. Enter your middle name here. So this is another way you can actually guide them on to know what to fill in that input. If I also want it to be compulsory, I shouldn't make this word compulsory because it's not every user that have middle name structure. So depending on the type of website you are building, if it is a business website, you have to be flexible, because if you are too strict, a lot of visitors will not want to buy products from you. If you are telling them that their middle name is compulsory, that one is compulsory, making so many things what are compulsory. So you have to be flexible. But if you have to do with maybe a job offering form, maybe a website whereby they are filling the form for them to get the job, I want to tell you that no matter how strict you are, they will be forced to fill it because they need money. So you need to know that there is a concept behind when to validate and when not to validate. Okay, now let's go to the front end now and check. Let's go back to the front end and check. You will notice that the two inputs, they are appearing on the same line, just because all the tags you use, they are inline elements. They are inline elements. In other words, tags that will produce their results on the same line with the previous tag's content, in as much there is still available space. So the only thing that will have made this particular input to go to the next line in order to make it block form, it is when there is no space. So if I keep adding now, if I keep adding, once I get to a point where the space that is remaining is not enough to accommodate the new element, automatically it will force itself to the next line. But for you to regulate it, that is why I said all you need to do is to be wrapping them in div. Now, let me bring this one in div now, like we did the other time. So let me activate the div. So I will cut this closing session, Control S, and then I'm bringing it just after the first input here, just like what we had before. And then I'm creating another div here, because this is the structure I am going to use. I want all of them to be displaying as block elements. I don't want them to display as inline elements. That is the reason why I am simply wrapping them inside what? div. So I did what I did now for you to know the reason or what exactly we are achieving with the div. Now, if we go back to the front end now, you will notice that what? They are now displaying what? Block form. Hope that is clear. So I don't need my submit button now. I don't need the submit button. The submit button will come after the last element. So I'm going to delete it. So what we need right now, because we are still developing the form. So you can see that this one does not carry what? Anytime you put the span, it will be taking this style automatically. So now we will now go for another element. We want to also collect their dates. So let's collect, I want to collect their dates. The date they are filling this form, so that once they submit this form to my back end, I can use the dates to know when exactly the user filled the form. Though when we get to the back end, the what we call what? Date and time stamp. I can implement it from the back end that whenever a record is dropped here, stamp the time and the date that record is coming in. But if I want to achieve it from the front end, then I have to use what? I have to create date input. So I will start by opening another div. So each time I want to create different input, I will open what? Another input. Then I will start with the label for dates, and then I will write date of birth. Let's say what? DOB is your choice, or just write what? Date. Then the input for collecting date. Here we have started changing our input type. Remember, I said input type attribute or input type, which is this type, is an attribute that explains the type of data the user is expected to fill inside the input or the box. You know, all this while we have been using text, because first name is text, middle name is text. But for date, it's not text. Date has its own special word, which is called what? Date. And it should not be written in capital letter. Just type what? Date. So just typing this date will automatically give you a date or give you a calendar. You see, while I was typing, if I type this one, date time, this one will capture both the date and the time. So if I go to the front end and check now, so that is not working. So let's stick to ordinary dates. So let's check now. Once you come back and check, you see a calendar icon. So once the user click here, it's going to be bringing what? The entire calendar for them to what? To pick from. So all they need to do is just to pick the date they are filling the form, and that's all. So instead of you giving them the input for them to type the date, some of them might see this as being stressful. And because of that, they may not want to fill your form. That is why we are offering them all these assistance so that it will now reduce the number of inputs they are to provide. Okay? All right. So now we have created that. So the next thing I want to collect is the gender of the users. The gender. So I'll start with another div in order for me to also make it a block element. Then I will start again, label for, let's say what? Gender. Label for gender. So I will type it here, gender. Label for gender. So once you understand the pattern, it's very simple. Now I'm adding break here because we are going to nest multiple inputs inside this div. We are going to have an input for a male. We are going to have an input for someone to choose that she's a female. And then we're going to have an input for someone to choose whether it's not male or female. So because of that, that is why we are adding break, because like this other one, we have just one input. But in this div, we are going to have multiple inputs. And for me to make those inputs inside that div to display in a block format, that is why I am breaking them at the end of each line. So the input, the first input I'm going to create is for someone to specify whether he or she is a male or female. So let me start with the male option. Now, the input type changes to radio because you are giving them options. So radio is when you want to create multiple inputs and the user only have the privilege of choosing one out of all to make choice. And they can only choose one. Even if you create 20, the person can choose only one. That is when you use radio as your input type attributes. So I still need to give it what? Name, because I would like PHP to process it to the back end. So the name will be what I use there, which is what? The gender, like I told us. And then here we are bringing in value because there are options. So if the user choose or pick this option, what value will be processed to the back end? They process what? Male. And then, of course, we have to display the mail, because if we go to the front end now, the mail is in what? Angle bracket. So it's not going to be visible. So outside this, you now type what? The mail. You now type the mail. And then you now add your break space and type break. Now, but we still have to bring one more option, because they have to check the radio. The person have to click. So for them to be able to check it, so after that value, we will add an attribute called what? Checked. We will add this. So if I go to the front end to check what I've done, you can see the option here. So that radio button, that blue icon inside the cycle, is what was generated by that check that I added. Now, I will now duplicate this particular input. Duplicate this input, Control C. While you are still inside that same div, Control V. 2 more times, Control V. Then all you need to do is just to change. You are not changing here. This input is still an option, and it's still what? Gender. But if the user pick the next one, it should submit female, not male. So this is the only place you'll be changing. And then here, you should also check it. Then, yes, you change to what? Female. Then, if the user does not want to fill any of this, if the person is not male, neither female, then radio button remain constant, name remain constant. The here changes to order. Order, and then here will also change to order. So let's go back to our front end and check the outcome of what we have designed so far. You can see that what? There's no way you can pick 2 at the same time. You can only pick 1. So this is how to create what? Options. So this might not be used for, it might not be used for gender. It might be for any other input. Let's say educational qualification. And you are mandating the user to pick only one. Maybe if you are not picking BSc, you are picking what? HND. So anything that to do with providing multiple options and for them to pick only one, then you have to use radio attributes. So I believe that is clear. Is it clear to us, please? One person respond before I proceed, please. If it's clear to you, please. Please, I need the response. Once I ask a question, one of you to just unmute and say something.
Yes, sir. To me.
Okay. All right. So let's look at the form. So we have not come to the end of the form because we still have more data to collect from the user. So for that reason, we still need to create more input. Now I want to collect their states, the states they are from, and I'm not going to allow them to be typing it also. So I will create a drop down that they can pick from. So I'll start with another div, the label for, so you can see that we are repeating some of these things. So there's no way it should be difficult for you. So let's say what? States. And then I'll put it there as what? States. So I'll break this because, okay, there's no need of breaking it. So states, then for states, I'm not using input because I want to create what we call selection dropdown for them to be able to select from. So I just need to create a dropdown that when they click on it, then it will now pop out all the listed states. Then the user can pick from any one of them. So to do that, we are not using input. We will start with select. So select is another tag that is associated with form design. Now, it means that it's a container wrapped inside the main container. So this is a container that is inside what? div container. I told us the other time that once you want to recognize an element as a container, once you have declared it, space it, press enter in order to what? To open it up. So here, the name is going to be state. And then I'm leaving the ID. I'm not using the ID for anything for now. Now, for me to create those options that they are going to pick from, I will use another tag called what? Option. Now, the first one does not need a value. In other words, the first one is just to guide them on what to do, which is what? When they log into the website, by default, I want them to see what? Choose states. So that is not going to be processed to my back end. That is the reason why I'm not putting any value here. So if I go to the front end now to check the impact, you can see that anytime they get to the page, either your contact page where you are programming this form, what they are going to see by default is what? Choose state. So that would tell someone that, oh, I'm to click here to view all the states. Now, to create other states or to list other value, I will just keep inside the select tag and keep declaring option. But any option they pick any moment from now will be submitted to the back end. So therefore, you must supply a value here. So if they pick, let's say this one is Abia, then you repeat the same Abia here. The same Abia should be repeated. So let me create more before we check the front end. So this is what you keep doing. The next state, I'm just assuming data state. So there is an API code that you can, if you have it free, if you don't have it free, you have to purchase it. There's an API code that you can add that will synchronize all the country and all their states, all their local government, even down to what? So every country have an API code where they have compressed all the words, the location, the state, and everything. But in this case, we are not using API. We are creating it by ourselves. That is why we are declaring the states one after the other. So whatever you type in the value is what you repeat here. So let me do for like at least 5 before we check the outcome of what we have done so far. So we have Lagos here. So let's check the front end so you can see it. So once the user click here now, there are now what? Options for them to pick from. So that is how to create what? A dropdown using 2 major tags, select and option. So option is just to list the item, while select is the container that is wrapping them. Hope that is clear. Any question?
Sir.
Question?
Sir.
Go ahead with your question.
That means if you're going to list the task state, you write all of them down.
That is what I'm saying. If you are not using API, API is a code. Is a code that you subscribe with API platform, and then you purchase it, and then that API code, when you get to this place, you add it, it will synchronize all the countries. So once you pick like Nigeria, it will list out all the states in Nigeria. Once you pick a state, it will list out all the local government area in that state, and then depending on the structure of that country. But if you are not building based on that API, then you have to manually type all this, or you leave it there, you use an input like this. You know you don't want to stress yourself, you can just use an input like this. So just use an input. Just use an input. I want to put it in div. So just create an input and ask them to type the date, the states by themselves. So that's it. You do the same thing. So if I go to the front end now, then if you don't want to stress yourself, you don't have money to buy the API, and you don't want to take your time to create all these, then you have to type it manually. Or you can use iframe. You can use iframe. Remember, we talked about iframe. You should remember iframe. You can use iframe.
You copy the source.
Good. Then you can get the code maybe on Google. You can just go to Google. There might be some platform where somebody must have used it. They use the iframe to clone it.
Oh,
Must have.
okay.
Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's continue. Let's continue. Now, we still want to collect more information from our user. Which other information I want to collect? Let's assume I want to collect their educational background. So that would also take us to how to use a particular tag. Now, for educational background, you start again with div, expand it, label for edu, then I will just specify education. Then I'll say input. I'm using input tag to design this, but the type will be checkbox because they are going to pick. Somebody can have two different words, educational qualification, can have SSE, can have what, BSc, and even more. So it's not like a radio button. It's not like one option. So whenever you want to declare multiple options, if the user can pick more than one, then you use checkbox. That is the idea I'm trying to explain here. So now the name will also follow. So here is the name is Edu, and then you need to also bring in value because the user, whatever they pick, will be processed to the back end. So this one is this value is for, let's say, BSc, and then I'll come out here and type it so that it can be visible. BSc, and then because I'm creating multiple options also, so I will add what? Break. Then I could just copy this very one to save my time. Control C, Control V, multiple times. Sorry. So let me edit. So I'm leaving here the same. I'm leaving here the same. So I will just be editing the value section. This one is H ending. Then I'll also change the description to H ending. Maybe you will have ranked it. Okay, let's take it from the top. So leaving here the same, leave here the same, change here to SSCE. SSCE. So let's say I'm working with these three. Clear this up. So let's go to the front end and check what we have. So you can see. So we need to add break in between one of them in order to, we have to add break here so that all the options will go down. Add break here. Then let's go back to the front end so you can see it. So let's test it whether it's working. So if they click on this, so somebody can pick more than one. You can see it now. You can see it. You can see it. But if I want by default, because there are times in some websites, somebody might have all. So instead of bothering the person from checking by himself, you can as well program it in a way that by default, all of them will be checked. Then it's not left for him or her to be unchecking the one he or she does not qualify for. So if you want to add that, you come to this place and just add what? That same word, checked. Then add it to each of them, checked. Come here, checked. So if I go back now, you will meet all of them checked by default. So if, for example, you are filling this form and you are not qualified for this, you can just click here to remove it and see have other ones what checked. So it's optional. It's not depend on you. It's either you want to leave them blank, not left for them to pick, or you program everything to have been checked by default. So that is for that. So one more thing I want to program is I want to collect their passports. I want to collect their passports. So anybody that is filling this form, I want a photograph of that person. So at the same time, that is structure to expose you to another attribute. Please, I want us to take note of this. I am strategically applying them. I don't want to start focusing on them. This input type, where we use text for text-based. Input type, where we use date for date. Input type, where we use what? Radio for option, where you have to pick only one. The input type, where we use checkbox. So take note of all those input type. So the next one the next data I want to collect from the user is label for photo. Label for photo. So I will just use my description, upload photo. Upload. Okay, let me just say what? Upload. Okay, upload photo. So my input type, here we are introducing another input type, which is used for processing media file. Anytime you want to process a video, picture, any of these file, audio, media file to the back end, PHP requests that your input type should be file. So just type in this file and then the name so that PHP can process whatever picture they upload. The name should be photo. The name should be photo. And then if I go back to the front end now, you see that well, just because I type file, that is why I'm able to have this option that can open up my system storage and pick any photo I want to pick. So with this, I've already picked what? An image. So once I submit now, this picture will also be processed to the back end of this website. What generated this file, this option that is opening our system storage is because you added what? File as a type. Okay. Now, I also want it to break. So let me add break here so that I will have a better user interface. Good. I want it to go down. Now, another one again, so that will show us how to work with another input is email. It's very important. I want to collect their email. This is going to be the last one before we add our submit button. So label for email. Email. Label for email. Then for email, I'm also using inputs, and the input type is going to be email. In other words, I am validating. You know, email have a standard format. Your name and what? @ So by adding this email, if you are not following the email format, it will reject it. We'll try it now. So now I will also say what? Name. Name should be what? The same thing I use as my label. And then let's check now and see the outcome. So let's say you are typing something that is not an email format like this, and you click on submit. Once we add the submit now, it will reject it. So let's add the submit now as the last one. Now for submit, pay attention here now. Now I am classing the div holding my buttons. So this div is for creating all my buttons. So the class name is button, because I'm going to have two buttons, a button that will submit the data to the back end, and a button that could clear all the value. If, for example, now a user starts filling the form, and at some point the person has made a lot of mistakes, you want to delete everything instead of going to each of those inputs and start clearing those files. I want to add a button that will automatically clear everything for such a user. So I have two buttons, and that is why I am wrapping them in a separate container with a different class name so that I can float it as I like, because I'm targeting the CSS, which is going to be our next class. We are not styling the form today. We just make sure that the form is ready. So in our next class, which is on Wednesday morning, what we are going to look at is how to style, how to make this form user-friendly, coloring it, changing the structure. Everything we are going to learn there will be what? CSS. And that will now bring us to the end of the form design before we go for the main web building. So now, the first thing I'm going to do, remember the other time I created the submit button using a button tag, just to let you know that there is a tag that can create button. So out of the two buttons, I'm going to create one with that tag and then the other one with the input, so that you understand that you have the privilege of using any of them. So let me start with the input. Let me start with the input method. So we are not calling anything label for button. We don't need button because button will come with their description. So now label type will be submit because is actionable word, going to be a clickable word, text. And we are not even wrapping it in an icon tag because this submit alone know that word is a clickable word button. Now, by default, the type must be submit, but I can have submit here based on the type of form I am designing. Maybe it's a registration form. So if it is registration form, or maybe if it is an e-commerce form where the user are expected to click on a button to buy. So instead of me saying submit, I can say buy. Or instead of me saying submit, I can say what? Register. That is the essence of bringing in value. If you don't put value, it will assume that your description is submit. But where you want to alter with the default description, you bring in value, and then you simply say what? Let's say what? Register. Register will now be. So if I go to the front end, what you are going to see there instead of submit is what? Register. But admin I did not bring in this, then it will display what? Submit. So let's go there and check now. So you can see. So if I remove that, or if I want to maintain the same thing, let me remove it and check what we are going to have. So this is how you can change your button description. You can see that what? It will now fall back to what? Submit. Okay, so let me leave it at what? Submit. I just wanted us to understand that you want to change the description of the button, you add value attribute, and then you supply whatever description you want to have. Second, please. All right. Now, I'm bringing in another button. Like I said, that button will always be, submit button will always be the last button. Nothing else will come after, so except you probably want to say something about the form. You want to describe something. That is where you can put it under the submit. So the next button, I want to create it with a button tag so that you know that there is a tag for creating button. So you type what? Button. But if you are using this tag, it will not come with type. So you manually go inside and declare your type attribute. And then you now supply what? Reset. That is what I want this button to do. We are not putting any description. Button will come with its own description, just like this. So this reset is going to trigger an action. The action is going to trigger is this. Let's go to the front end now that we have all the tags. Let's say you fill here, Egwero. Let's say you enter the middle name, Prosper, and then you pick a date here. You pick a date here, and then after you have filled to an extent, you now discover that, you have made a lot of error. And instead of you coming here to manually be deleting like this, just click on this button. We have not added description. Sorry, that is why it's not showing. So because it's a button, so we have to add description. So I will say what? Submit. I will say reset. Now the description here, I can say cancel because it's the best word people will understand. Majority of people will not understand what is called what? Reset. So put word that is more descriptive. So if I go back there now, you see what? Cancel. So if I click on cancel now, I want to check all those information. Okay, I've already implemented it. So let's say I type again. I type this. Then I pick this. And then let's say I pick any of this. Then I want to clear everything and start all over. Just click here. You see that what? It will automatically what? Remove everything. So you actually you created that button just to assist them to always clear whatever they must have typed inside the input boxes. So whatever you are doing here is not meant to be submitted to the back end. That is why we did not add anything like name. Okay? All right, so that brings us. So let's say I have a brief explanation or maybe an advert that I want to create under the submit button. So while I am in that div, I can just bring in maybe p tag and save something. I can say welcome. Welcome to Digitech Zip Hub. A platform for online learning. So if you go back to the front end now, you see that description there. So while they are filling the form, you are trying to chip in some adverts, or you can even wrap it in the marquee, that scrolling text that I taught us the other time, so that can be scrolling as a way of marketing yourself while they are filling the form. So any questions so far, because this is where we draw the curtain. If you have any question, you can ask. Like I said, in our next class, what we shall be focusing on is how to style this form to look user-friendly. We are going to work on the color, styling, or the input, making everything look presentable and readable to the user. Question, please. If there's no question, then your assignment, you are to develop, you have to do exactly what I've done. You want to add more input, fine. But before the next class, which is on Wednesday, please, I want every one of us to have created something like this. Question, please.
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
The check button, how did you turn it to blue?
You mean this check?
Beside the BSc, HND, and SSC? Yes.
No, it came by default. It came by default.
Okay, because mine is not showing that blue color.
Can you share your screen? Let me see. Please share your screen.
Okay. Can you see it?
Okay, okay. You only show which color? Okay, that is something like grayscale, right?
Not sure. Yes, yes, yes.
By default, I didn't do anything. So it could be your browser.
Okay, okay,
Your browser.
okay, okay, no problem.
Any other question, please? Let's ask question, no. Or maybe I should preview my code so that you can snap, copy. Are we good to go? Okay, I'm going to be calling you by your names now. Mr. Ossi, are we good to go?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are good to go.
Flourish, are we good to go? Are you sure, Flourish?
Oh,
Eh?
I'll follow up. I was told, not to. I did not even follow the class. I just followed to an extent.
Okay, so just make sure you go through the video and then do the same.
Okay,
Purity, are you following? Are we good to go?
Yes, sir.
Okay, please, this one is compulsory assignment. As a matter of fact, I will start disciplining us. If you don't do these assignments, in fact, before I start on Wednesday, this is what I want to see. Every one of you will preview their front end. I want to see this. So you can snap it now. So that whatever you are
Is
doing,
there any way,
so snap it.
you can make it smaller so that will snap?
I should make it smaller.
So that everything will show.
No, for this, you are already seeing everything. Are you not seeing everything? For this, and maybe yourself will go for the code.
No, for that one.
Hmm?